Okay, so a very quick bonus video, and I've got a guitar on the bench that has only just really recently left the bench, and this is the Back to Basics Telecaster that I built a few months ago. And it's back on the bench because it suffers with the problem that I generally get with all the guitars I build, just because of the environment I build them in, and that's a little bit of fret sprout. And for those of you that don't understand what that is, fret sprout is basically when the frets start to extend beyond the neck. And what that will do, it will leave very sharp little bits of metal that you can lacerate your fingers on if you're not careful. This one isn't too bad, but there is definitely some kind of extra metal there. And the reason we get this is, as I say, it's environmental. I've got an Australian neighbour and they describe the English climate as 8 months of winter followed by 4 months of shit weather. And they're pretty much correct. My workshop is not heated, so it's cold most of the year and a little bit on the damp side. When my guitars leave the workshop, the frets are super and nice and flush with the neck, and there's no feeling of extra metal at all when you run your finger up and down them. However, as soon as they get into the house, the neck will dry out ever so slightly and it will shrink ever so slightly. The frets, on the other hand, aren't susceptible to that, and they will remain the same size, which means that they just poke out a little bit. It's not a big deal. As I say, I kind of expect it to happen, and I'm not the only person it happens to. I've worked on some pretty high-end guitars that also suffer the same fate. Thankfully, this is something that can be sorted out very, very quickly. And in fact, I'm not even going to take the strings off to do this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to detune the E strings, and I'll just pull them out of the way a little bit. So they're not in my way. And I'll just tape those up. So they don't come jumping back. Now next up is we need to make sure that we're not going to damage the beautiful lacquer work on the neck. And that's fairly straightforward. I'm just going to run a length of masking tape just along that binding. Just to keep that from getting scratched up. I've got some thin stuff here. And I'll just do that both sides of the neck. Thus. And then, and this is kind of my favourite part of this technique that I'm going to use, instead of going like the whole hog and taping up every individual fret position on these, I'm just actually going to tape over the edge of there, and I'm going to press that down, and then I'm going to break out my fret dressing file. And all I'm simply going to do is I'm going to run that over the masking tape. And it'll rip some of it up, but what it will also do is it'll make those sharp fret ends just cut through the masking tape. So when we pull that off, they are all now very nicely flushed down. And if I take off the other tape, there's no discernible damage to the lacquer on that binding either. There's a little bit of adhesive stuck on there, which we will clean off in a minute, but we haven't caused any problems. So now I'm going to flip it over. And I'm just going to do exactly the same. Tape off. And again, fret sprout has disappeared. That isn't the whole story though, because there is still a little bit more sharpness than I might want on there. So I'm going to dig out my fret dressing file, and this has got two different sides to it. This side has got a nice square edge, and that's really good for getting right into that corner and just taking that sharpness away. And then the other side, it's got more of a rounded edge, and you can just use that to put the radius back on the end of your fret. If you need to. These are actually kind of coming together quite nicely. So I don't think I'm going to have to do an enormous amount of work with them. Now when I say these have sprouted beyond the edge of the fretboard, what I mean by that is there is probably an unmeasurable amount of material that you're removing. It's just that you can feel it, and it's kind of quite obvious to the touch, even if you can't kind of get a handle on exactly how much is poking out. And that is beautiful. So I'm going to do exactly the same on the top face. And then we can get this put back together. And then we can just get this tape off. Just get rid of any kind of metal filings that there might be knocking about. And there we have it, all done. And that's literally taken me about 15 minutes to do. So it's not a massive job, but it completely transforms the way that that neck feels. Hopefully you found that useful, and it will demystify A, what fret sprout is, and B, how to cure it. If so, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'll be back in a couple of days' time with the next installment of my latest build. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.